Additional aids and services are available to individuals with disabilities. To make such a request, please contact us by email, by clicking the Help tab in the PD portal, or at pdportal@tamu.edu, by phone, including Relay Texas at 1-800-441-7323, or in writing to Train PD, PD Portal Support, 4477 TAMU, College Station, Texas 77843. Both a transcript and accessible document of the content presented in this webinar can be found as resources in the course description. Click on the blue links under Course Resources in the description. When a link is clicked, a new browser window will open.
Welcome to Manager Monday, everybody. Our topic today is common barriers and challenges for ITPs. Those are internationally trained professionals who are seeking to re-enter careers. We're going to get started today with Anne Savino. She is from TWC and works a lot with career pathways.
So this is the first slide. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Anne Savino from the AEL State Office, and I manage a lot of the state leadership grants and provide support to the TA team that you all are working with as grantees. Today, we are delighted to have Upwardly Global. We actually know them from the technical assistance that they've provided to these skilled immigrant integration projects since about 2018. And then we go a little bit further back with some of the work that Emily has done before in Texas in adult education with the workplace literacy program at Tyson. So I'm delighted to have familiar folks with us today and glad that they're going to be sharing some new opportunities serving our internationally trained professionals. So this next slide, there's actually just terminology I wanted to share with you, just so if you aren't familiar with some of the ways that we refer to our internationally trained professionals, you start to get comfortable with that. Under WIOA, the full language is internationally trained professionals who are English language learners with degrees and professional credentials in their native country. So that's the full language that's in WIOA. In Texas, we have our intensive service models where we serve our internationally trained professionals. And Texas pretty much coined the term ITP. So you may hear that acronym. And we made it up in Texas, I think, and it's been accepted now across the country. I think it was Austin Community College who found that term for us. So we use it a lot. So if you hear ITP, well, that's what we're referring to. And then sometimes we'll just use the term skilled immigrants because these are folks in our programs that come in with skills and credentials from their home country. So this is just going to kind of bullet out the criteria for serving ITPs as intensive services in Texas. So these are the folks that come in at intake and say, yes, I have a post-secondary education, maybe a technical or vocational certificate or credential from their home country. They might have an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, or beyond a bachelor's degree. I think everybody who's worked with this population knows that they've had doctors and lawyers and nurse practitioners and surgeons and engineers and IT professionals, just the full gamut of individuals that come into our programs, but they need the English language support in order to get reemployed in their career. So part of gathering that information and what makes your intake process really important is that it gives you an opportunity to ask some additional questions, asking about the field of study. If you do have someone that says, hey, yeah, I have a degree, I was a doctor, I was a nurse in my home country, then you can ask what type of credential they got. Did they actually work? Is there specific work experience, which is usually the case? And are they in possession of their transcripts? So lots of questions that you can follow up in an intake process or in a comprehensive assessment interview afterwards. So we just wanted to highlight that and put that on your radar. It's a good opportunity to capture some of that information. And also the field of study, we're going to be updating teams, I believe, in the next year, in which you're going to be able to enter that data in teams. So that'll be great. So let's move on, and I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because this is the reason why we actually are so excited about the services that we have available to our internationally trained professionals. What are the numbers? Let's go look at these slides. So I'm going to take you back to program year 1920, and overall our enrollments were just over 69,000, but we had almost 12,000 individuals that walked into our programs and said that they had a degree or credential from their home country. So as you can see, the importance of serving these folks effectively is really based on the data that we're seeing and the resources that we realize we need to bring to you in the field. So that year we served 2,400. So program year 22-23, we had almost 70,000 folks in our program, and those that were be eligible as ITPs, just over 16,300. But you can see that we really increased our services. So that year we served over 4,500 individuals as ITPs. So that's really excellent, and it goes to a lot of our providers who are part of this skilled immigrant network and really got out there to enhance their processes on the ground level. And then last year, we had just over 73,000 folks over total enrollments. Those that would be eligible for ITPs, we increased that number slightly and over to 16,428. And then we increased our service models also, 4,700 plus receive ITP specialized services. So what do we know as the primary barrier? And this is really well documented across the country. The primary barrier to employment for ITPs who are English language learners is their level of English proficiency. So we know once they get to a certain point in their fluency and the engagement with employers, with interviewing, with sharing the depth of their knowledge, obviously becomes easier. And they also have the asset of sharing their native language. So being a bilingual or multilingual, which is often the case of some of these internationally trained professionals, is a real asset to our workforce. So just a quick look at what the service model looks like. And really, under our guidance, you can serve these individuals who want to re-enter their career path in a range of services. It's really up to you at the local level. We know that maybe you're starting with very remedial or beginning English language fluency, so you may be starting at that level, but gathering together those individuals who are skilled professionals often helps to accelerate their engagement in language learning. We know that the levels of fluency vary across the state and that building that takes time. So there you can really design a pathway across your ITP services that help people get to the fluency and the employment opportunities in the future.
I would like to introduce Emily Logo and Kira Craig. Emily Logo is the National Director for Program Partnerships at Upwardly Global. Emily leads Upwardly Global's partnership initiative, scaling the organization's coaching tools and model to help build towards a more inclusive, equitable workforce. Prior to joining Upwardly Global, Emily helped found and grow Upward Academy, the largest public-private partnership between adult education and business in the United States, delivering workplace education programming on site for thousands of frontline employees. Her previous roles include Program Manager and American Dream Fellow with the Cisneros Center for New Americans and Research Consultant with Welcoming America. We also have Kira Craig, who is Partnerships Development Manager with the Workforce Ecosystem at Upwardly Global. Kira aids in advancing Upwardly Global's strategic initiatives by meticulously identifying, nurturing, and securing new partnerships within the workforce ecosystem. Her efforts extend to bolstering partnership development across related ecosystems, including academic institutions and community-based organizations. Prior to joining Upwardly Global, Kira worked closely with American Job Centers by creating and bridging relationships between WIOA participants and online training providers on the ETPL across the United States. Welcome so much, and we're glad to have you here, Emily and Kira.
Thank you for welcoming us in. As they mentioned, I'm Kira. You're welcome to call me Key. Upperly Global, it's the first and longest serving national organization. Essentially, we help immigrants and refugees restart their careers and bring their perspective into the American workforce. While there are babies constantly being born, newcomers are constantly arriving, our population is growing rapidly. And one of the good things that we're finding is that the newcomers that are finding themselves in America, they have degrees. A lot of them have degrees. But even though they're coming and they have degrees, they are still the largest population that we're finding to be the most underemployed or unemployed. Oftentimes finding themselves taking survival jobs, though they may have master's degrees and maybe a PhD. And so that number continues to grow. And we recognize that this population doesn't come with the advantage, let's say, as a person from the US would come with. They also face barriers and challenges. And so we're going to kind of talk through what some of those challenges and barriers are. Some of these challenges that you see are pretty familiar and common with. So we want to just talk about how we address these challenges and barriers through the work that we do with Upperly Global. So one, when you think of job search strategy, you're new to America, you don't have a job search strategy. You may not necessarily understand what that is. Maybe you don't have the support in place, a go-to person that can help you to really figure out how do you navigate this US workforce. Licensings and certifications, a really, really big one that we see, English language proficiency. You can imagine how intimidating it can feel finding yourselves in a new country and you don't speak the language. I travel a lot and I even feel that myself when I go to other countries. That's a really big one that they face, and we want to empower them to be confident. Gaps in resume, a lack of professional network. We all understand and we hear often it's not what you know, it's who you know. But if you find yourself in a different country and you don't have this network, then you're naturally at a disadvantage because you can't rely on what you don't have. And then, of course, they find themselves stuck in the survival jobs. So think about maybe the doctor from Poland or the lawyer from Afghanistan, right? And now they're here in America. Maybe they're doing Lyft or Amazon or DoorDash. And so what we want to highlight here with Upperly Global, we realize the importance that the immigrants and refugees have in the U.S. workforce. And we really want to take our curriculum, everything that we've unpacked and explored over the last 20 years and put it in a box and offer it to our partners to really help them to understand how we're working to address these challenges that newcomers oftentimes experience when they find themselves here in America. So some of the ways in which we address these gaps and barriers, we offer skilling, upskilling opportunities through our program. We also offer a dashboard through our learning platform. Some of the gaps and barriers is the insufficient data tracking. A lot of organizations, specifically when I've worked with workforce organizations, and I'm talking are connecting with case managers and their clients aren't necessarily coming back to give them updates, whether that's job placement, things of that sort. And so the information is limited. We don't have a lot of data that's being tracked and is overall sufficient. Lack of differentiated career services for immigrants and refugees. And so one of the great things I always like to talk about when I'm talking to a potential partner is, hey, I'm pretty sure you already have your own tools and resources that you offer. Maybe you're implementing team, but is it specific to the immigrant and refugee population? Because a lot of times that is a really big barrier. Difficulty building employer partnership pipelines. So the challenge with forming skill-based partnerships with employers. And then, of course, just a limited resource and knowledge base used to serve immigrants and refugees. Again, I kind of tie this one back to the lack of differentiated services that are being offered. I always like to tell potential partners the way you support an immigrant job seeker is not necessarily the same way you will support a U.S. job seeker. And so having people on your team that understand what it takes to support this type of job seeker is really important. And so, again, we want to work to address those gaps and barriers. So I'm going to pass this one to Emily. This is one of our more meatier slides. So Emily's going to kind of dissect this and help us to have a deeper understanding of the current state journey for an immigrant refugee job seeker here in America.
Thank you, Key. Hello, everyone. And I want to acknowledge too the slide that Key just spoke to. I think it's worth mentioning as well that it was actually research that was surfaced during some of our work in partnership with the Lumina Foundation last year as we spoke with community colleges across the country specifically. What are some of the gaps and barriers that their teams are finding in their work with immigrant and refugee professionals? We're excited that you'll be able to have that slide to reflect on as well, since many of you on this call may have potentially even contributed to that research. So we recognize that a lot of the gaps and barriers we've mentioned so far are not only things that you're familiar with as you support your clients, but I would say things that you're actively trying to create solutions for, supporting folks in advancing their English language levels is one obvious way that I know everyone on this call is looking to advance outcomes for immigrant and refugee professionals. I think this slide, because we're all educators, is helpful to just sit a little bit deeper in what do we mean when we say immigrant and refugee professionals face specific challenges in their navigation of the workforce. And did this huge favor of actually fronting this conversation with all of the work that TWC has already done to date in understanding this community, identifying this community. So I will say, for example, the data tracking barrier, Texas is way out ahead on that in a way that I think everyone on this call should be really proud of. A lot of states aren't there yet, for example, in that data collection and really being able to see this community and the needs. But I want to take us on a little bit of a deeper journey. And we'll start right when we say the US job search. That is an entire culture of first do this, then do that. That really is not intuitive, even for those of us like myself who grew up in the US job search culture. And it's probably definitely not that intuitive to folks who are learning the expectations of the US job search for the first time. And what is interesting is that it doesn't matter often how much prior experience you have. You could be a 25-year veteran engineer from Venezuela. Some of these key barriers will continue to pop up for folks as they're looking to advance their US job search. So we're going to talk about a few more of what those are. And then specifically, we want to get into a few ways in which Upwardly Global over the last 25 years has developed key skill resources, training resources, both for the job seekers or those students themselves, as well as for the practitioners who are supporting them and advancing their career here in the United States. So for example, we really break it out and say, what does this job search process look like? And what are some of those common barriers that someone's facing? Some of those that Key mentioned. One, the job search itself. Where do I go to find appropriate job listings for me? Monster.com, Idealist, these are likely maybe not platforms that existed. So from the very beginning, our job seekers are really asking these fundamental questions of where do I go to get a head start? Where do I start? And so then also they're often facing this initial barrier of I'm looking at Monster.com at all of these jobs. How do I even understand or begin to evaluate what these job titles in the United States mean for me and my career experience? How do I map my experience to the job titles and descriptions I'm reading online or elsewhere with an employer? What are the requirements then? Let's say I do find a job that looks like a great fit for me. What are then the expectations for how I go about preparing myself in terms of the material collateral I'll need to really advance and start putting myself into this process for a professional level job? This is navigating the online process. And what does a US style resume look like? For example, why can't I use that 9-page CV that I used in my country of origin and expect someone to give me a call back? So there's really that building the knowledge around what are the expectations of the collateral I'll need, and which we'll get a little more into. But then let's say you get that first interview and now you're in the interview process and you're super excited. But then you have that initial phone screening, and let's say it didn't go well, it felt really awkward. And maybe because of the language barriers, or maybe because the job seeker wasn't really sure what to expect. What am I supposed to talk about on these initial screenings? How do I best position myself in my experience? And then I would say, as we're transitioning into that interview process again, what are the expectations for how to communicate if it's an in-person interview? Maybe there are cultural ways that someone from their country of origin might express deference or respect that don't translate to the US style, eye contact, or giving someone a really firm handshake. These are things that are intuitive to some of us, but may not be to our job seekers. And they can really derail someone's job search journey, regardless of how prepared they are in terms of credentials from their country of origin. A few other examples we'll give, because I want to make sure we have time to really get into other parts of this as well. Let's say a job seeker really moves through that interview process and is given a job offer. There are still barriers in how they're approaching the next steps and advancing their careers. One is, okay, salary negotiation. What is that? How do I do it? A colleague of mine here at Upwardly Global shared with me, he's from Italy. He said, Emily, the idea of negotiating your salary is kind of akin to punching your boss in the face. Like, you would just never do it. It would be so rude. And the idea of negotiating his own salary in his job search here in the US was, quite frankly, terrifying for him because it was so out of the cultural norm from what he was experiencing in Italy. These are really small things, we think, but we all know that how you prepare and set yourself up for salary negotiation at the beginning of your career has long-term impacts for your family, for your income, for your future salary opportunities. Okay, you've got the job. Now what? And while Upwardly Global doesn't focus as much on career advancement in terms once if someone's been placed in a career or a job that's more in line with their experience, we do recognize and want to call out that the learning journey does not end once you get the job. There's this onboarding period in which our clients are really learning to navigate the cultural norms and expectations of the US workplace. So on the next slide, what I want to spend more time talking about and with Key here is, great, we just highlighted all of these barriers and challenges. What can we do about them? And I would say, what have we been doing about them? Upwardly Global, as well as TWC. This is not going to be brand new work to anyone on this call, I don't think. But we want to spend a little bit more time talking about Upwardly Global's model, and specifically, as a national nonprofit, it is our goal and our mandate to partner and collaborate wherever possible with other organizations who are doing this work, who are serving this community, because we deeply believe and our mission drives us to say, how are we collectively, through partnership and through extending the tools and resources we use with our own clients to partners, how do we collectively advance outcomes for immigrant and refugee professionals? So Upwardly Global, I want to just clarify here, we really have two arms to our work. For the last 25 years, as we've mentioned, we have done direct service with our own clients, where we serve about 2,000 job seekers a year, directly supporting them through giving them a job coach to help them navigate their US job search, to giving them access to an online training platform that we built with and for our clients to really help them navigate expectations to overcome those barriers we talked about. We also provide access to upskilling and reskilling opportunities for our clients so that they can be taking that certification or getting that value add certification that will make them more competitive or skill aligned to the jobs they're looking for here. And then as well, opening up access to opportunities via employer networks, networking opportunities. So we continue to serve about 2,000 folks a year, and we're really proud of the fact that over the last 2+ decades, we've supported over 10,000 ITPs in advancing their careers here and getting back into skill-aligned work. About 5 years ago, Upwardly Global decided we need another avenue to be able to share these resources and tools We didn't want to just try and serve everyone directly, hire 1,000 job coaches, because we know that it's an estimate from the Migration Policy Institute that there's over 2.4 million immigrant and refugee professionals who have credentials from their countries of origin but are underemployed here in the US. And we realize that the best way to ensure that we can be collectively advancing outcomes for those 2.4 million people is through partnership. We designed our partnership model to say, hey, we recognize that many organizations, predominantly community colleges, adult learning centers, workforce agencies, and nonprofits, are already serving this community, but maybe they didn't have the benefit of 25 years of developing tools and resources that are specific to their experience to help them move along in their job search. So when we partner with organizations, and part of the work that Key and I really do is making sure we can raise our hand out there so that like-minded organizations know they have a friend and collaborator and can tap Upwardly Global to come alongside and really make the same resources we use with our own clients every day available to your teams, and also have that thought partner as we are, through use of similar tools and collaboration, advancing outcomes for job seekers. The rest of the time here, we really want to talk to you a bit more about how we support partners, and again, some of the ways in which we hope to maybe be a resource and collaborator to your teams as you are all advancing, to Anne's point, continuing to advance the goals, and I would say even funding demands of supporting immigrant and refugee professionals. So the next slide, I want to give another sense similar to Anne. When Upwardly Global partners and supports organizations with our resources, we are really looking to advance our tools to students or job seekers that fit this general profile. And that is a student of yours that would identify as an immigrant or a refugee, because all of our learning content, all of our tools are really designed for that experience. I would also say this is, I know, a big one that we'd love to talk more about. All of our tools and resources are really designed for folks who are more at an intermediate, perhaps more advanced English language level, as all of our content and our resources are in English by design, as we are looking to help folks who are ready to transition into skill-aligned work where English would be the expectation in the workplace. Digital literacy skills, we're really looking to focus and support folks that are already comfortable navigating email, online platforms, or really are having that digital fluency that would be expected in the professional track roles that they'll be entering into. Education level, Anne did a great job of introing this, and you all have a really good sense just from the work you're already doing. But we do say, right, if in partnership or collaborating with Upwardly Global, we really see students who have at least some technical vocational professional training or equivalent experience in a specific field are really getting the most out of these opportunities. And lastly, we say work authorized is ideal, because the goal when we're partnering and through the tools that Upwardly Global has to offer is that someone really is able to transition into skill-aligned employment where work authorization would be an expectation. However, I really want to emphasize that in so many of the partnerships we have across the country with community colleges specifically, a lot of folks love to use our platform tools with their students who are actually awaiting work authorization. This is a really meaningful way we've heard directly from our partners for their students to feel like they're actively preparing and working towards their career ambitions and goals even before they have work authorization in hand. I want to give you a quick sense of the type of resources we really offer to partners as we're all collectively looking to advance outcomes for immigrant and refugee professionals. I appreciate this audience because this is really our learning pathway. This is how we talk about what are the key barriers, which we discussed at the top, that our community most often faces. Now, what are we doing about that from a learning perspective to really help people feel prepared and supported in taking each next step? So, as we mentioned, as we're looking to address those different stages and the barriers that folks face, Upwardly Global has learning content that we use every day with our own community of job seekers that we serve directly. And we make this available to community partners so that other students in their sphere can be taking advantage of better understanding what is the US job market, how do I start navigating or situating myself within it. From there, we really take folks on that journey of helping them understand what the expectations of a US style resume are. For example, we covered the why can't it be 9 pages. Also things that are really specific to the immigrant experience, like the unfortunate bias that's often present in the employment system. For example, how do I address on my resume that I could have gone to the Harvard of Ghana, but if the employer on the other end doesn't understand the value or doesn't have the context for my international degree, how do I make that clear in my resume? So that's something that our resume tool and guidance really offers job seekers, is helping them both understand the expectations of the US job search, but then positioning their experience and credentials to really show up in a meaningful way. We then take folks through a cover letter experience. What is a cover letter? Why do I need it? How do I craft one specific to my industry or to a job description? And then we really take folks on a journey into marketing. This is one that I like to flag. I know there are versions of this in other parts of the world, but the United States has a very unique way of expecting that we market ourselves as superheroes in the job search. You go into a job interview and you have to say, I did this, I did that, I single-handedly raised $50 million. In many other cultures that may be more collectively oriented, it's not just awkward to do that. It might be rude to talk about your individual contributions. And so we really counsel folks on how to feel comfortable showing up and talking about their individual contributions and their experience in a way that's going to resonate with employers here in the US. Similarly, we then take folks on a journey into networking. I bet almost everyone on this call had a job at some point that they got because someone they know introduced them, sent an email that got them a coffee chat, that got their resume to the top of the pile. So many of our folks, ITPs, do not have the luxury of a built-in network, a professional network when they come to the United States. Regardless of how talented they are, their previous experience, they're often building that professional network from the ground up. So we really walk folks through what are the expectations of professional networking. Why can't you just go into a coffee chat and the first thing you say is, hey, can you get me that job? These are the types of, I would say, more cultural nuances that we support folks in navigating through our tools. Lastly, we have a whole module that's just on interviews because, as we've mentioned, they can be a little bit scary, even in your native language, or if you're familiar with the cultural norms and expectations. So we make sure we're counseling through this module folks on what to expect in that interview process. We also have a lot of other supplemental training that I won't get into here. The last thing I really want to share, and as it relates to how we collaborate closely with partners across the community college ecosystem, is recognizing that many of your students are coming to you and to your career services counselors with a wider range of background. Someone might have been a professional beekeeper, someone else was an accountant, and we know from the work done there, so many folks come from the healthcare industry or the IT industry. Something we know is that it's really hard for your staff and your teams to be experts in all of those industries and to really guide your ITP community on how to best adjust and advance their US job search by industry. So when we partner with organizations through the tools we can make available to you all and to your teams, what we're really able to do as well is offer students on your end who are ready to advance their professional careers access to our learning platform through the lens of the industry that they are coming from. So our learning platform has 5 key industry pathways. They're here in front of you: information technology, healthcare, finance, accounting, and banking, engineering and architecture, and then business logistics and operations. These are the 5 fastest growing industries in the United States. These are often the 5 industries many of the ITPs we're serving collectively are coming from or are looking to advance within. So all of the learning content that we offer our partners actually comes through an industry lens where helpful, so that your students can be really getting that awareness on the US job search expectations through their specific industry lens. And then your teams or folks who are working directly with them on their job search journey don't have to be experts in every little thing when it comes to supporting their search.
So I just want to piggyback when I'm on these calls with like the potential partners, and I tell them once I'm in the platform and we're doing a demo, I could talk to you about the trainings within these different pathways all day. It's so much good information. It's kind of hard to not want to show everything, like all of the different resources. So in addition to the industry specific pathways, as Emily mentioned, we also supplemental trainings. We have a really good LinkedIn training that I always like to be sure that I cover when I'm talking with our partners. Social media, I tell this all the time, and it's almost like a running joke, but I don't know when LinkedIn became the new Facebook, but it seems like that's what it's become. And so really getting them to understand the way you utilize and navigate LinkedIn, not only as a newcomer, but as a job professional, as a job seeker, is not the way you would use, let's say, Instagram or Twitter. We have some really great trainings that are specific to women in the workplace and just getting them to understand expectations, how to navigate conversations around childcare, really empowering them to be in that space. Because as you can imagine, not only is it intimidating to be in a corporate environment, but if you're the only woman on your team in a corporate environment, that already comes with its own set of challenges. I just always like to add those additional trainings in the conversation when we're talking about our pathways that we offer, because it's a lot of really good stuff in there outside of just the industry specific trainings. Another really great thing, and this kind of goes back to earlier in the presentation when I talked about the insufficient data tracking for organizations or their implementing team, maybe they don't have the resources to track certain information. So within our learning platform, one of the really cool and most useful things, especially when I'm talking to case managers or career navigators, is we essentially have a dashboard where we track all of your participants' progress throughout the platform. So think about the student or the job seeker that may be asking to come in to get support with their resume. Maybe they have a job interview coming up. They want to practice some interviews. Through our platform and through the demo, they'll be able to log in to see which job seeker is where, who's completed trainings, who's in progress of completing their trainings, who's not started their trainings. So maybe the conversation that you have with that job seeker that's constantly reaching out, wanting to be seen for interview practice, you can say, hey, I see you've not logged in your Upperly Global platform, you've not completed this training. Let's kind of start there. Let's get some support in place. And then once you get through that training, then once we come together in person, we have a little more substance we can work with a little bit more from the conversation. Again, this is just a snapshot of what you would see once you log into our demo platform of how we actually track the progress. So your job coaches will have access to this in terms of knowing how to manage their clients, reporting. We have multiple reports in terms of job placement report, training progress report. If there's maybe a report that you're looking for that we don't have, maybe that's something we can work to create. Sometimes I'm working with organizations and they're working towards a grant, and so they may need specific outcomes information. And so they may tap us on the shoulder to say, hey, have you all been tracking this? And so we can share this information. It's also built in through Salesforce. So information, we can mitigate information through the dashboard. The dashboard is just one of the exciting features within our demo that we offer job seekers and our partners. So Emily's going to talk a little bit about the role of the partnership ecosystem, and just, of course, I think we can all attest to the fact that the work that we do individually is critical, but it's even more critical and vital to those that we're working and looking to serve when we can come together as one unit through the strong collaboration of what we each offer to best serve the job seeker.
Thank you, Key. And I think Key really took us home on this. This is the part where we want to reiterate. We are a nonprofit. We are doing this work directly with immigrant and refugee professionals. We've been doing it a really long time, and we recognize that we work within a broader ecosystem that really focuses on or needs to be focused on collaboration if we want to see increased success for ITPs. So for us, we really believe that through collaboration with workforce agencies, with colleges and adult education programs, with other nonprofits, we can be collectively advancing outcomes for immigrant and refugee professionals, really helping folks advance beyond maybe entry-level work and back into skill-aligned roles that are commensurate with their experience. And so our main goal as a nonprofit, as an organization, is to now be broadening the ways in which we partner across these ecosystems to ensure that you all have an opportunity and have access to resources that you could be using in-house with your students that are really going to help differentiate their experience and help them advance into skill-aligned roles. There are a couple of ways we want to make sure you know we could continue this conversation as we think about how are we collaborating, colleges with nonprofits, nonprofits with workforce, etc. We have the gift in Texas of a lot of those ecosystems already being under one roof.
Can students connect directly with Upwardly Global and use this pathway trainings?
So I want to say again too that we have two ways that folks can connect with Upwardly Global. And one is through referring any student you're working with that might fit our eligibility criteria to our direct service program. That's the same program we've been delivering for 25 years. However, I would love to hear from folks or encourage folks to think about the other way that you're able to engage with Upwardly Global, and that is through our partnership model, which is essentially a train the trainer model, where we would come alongside your team, give you access to all the same tools and resources that a student would use if they joined our own direct service program. And we put them in your team's hands, and we support you in learning how to use them with your students so that where valuable, we could be not reinventing the wheel when it comes to using tools and resources that we know are helpful for this community. And we're making it easier, hopefully, for your teams to have the right learning resources and materials to make a difference with your students. So you wouldn't have to refer to Upwardly Global. Essentially, Upwardly Global would say, here, take all of the same pedagogy and resources, and we'll support you in learning how to use them directly with your students.
So I'm going to jump in and ask a question too, and just kind of reinforce, because it's been nice to hear about all of this, Emily and Key, and kind of understand at a deeper level the collaboration, that's possible. And I think one of the things our adult ed folks are always thinking about is kind of like, we got to do everything. It kind of feels like that. We get them to the English level, we got to help them find a job. That's a value that I'm seeing that you've articulated, is how you can kind of connect the dots and move folks to partnership relationships so that we can all do our part, but we're not having to do everything. So I'm wondering if at a local level, say somebody wanted to use your tools and maybe they could bring together their workforce solutions folks, who I think case managers on the workforce side could certainly benefit from understanding this population better and being a referral pipeline for our local providers, so that a student, when it gets to a proficiency level, they're seeking a job and they can use the tools with AEL, but with workforce solutions, and kind of pass folks to another case manager. I don't know if that's how you're working in some communities. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, and I love that question. And I think Texas is such a specific opportunity, I will say. How workforce and adult education are already in such close communication, as we know that's not always the case in other states. We see ourselves as dot connectors. We know this is a niche but not small community that could really use these differentiated resources and supports. And we also know just from our own work with adult education and with colleges that many of you are facing expectations that we're going to shift people into employment, but we recognize that there's a big gap sometimes between my English language level is now at a place where I feel ready, but then how do I really navigate the US job search and expectations to be able to get that job that I want and now feel better prepared for. So we really see ourselves as a collaboration partner, whereas you have students perhaps that are ready to make that transition, are really eager to advance their careers. We can be supporting your teams with the tools that will help them make that transition more effectively. Or to your point, Anne, we are happy to support and resource teams where it's most valuable. So if we can be that dot connector between you all and another workforce team, all the better. Our goal is really to say, please no one reinvent the wheel when it comes to utilizing tools and resources that are really going to support this community. And then also, how can we make your job easier? Because to your point, not everyone can be an expert in all of the things all of the time. But in my experience, almost every adult educator is coming with a lot of empathy. So we think and we want to try and do that. But I think Upwardly Global is really here to bridge that gap.
I know with our 243 funding, that funding is very much targeted to getting those folks into jobs, and having support in our workforce system is a great idea. And working with case managers at the local level makes a lot of sense. And it would seem like having the opportunity to share with them a tool that would help us, but share the wealth of the work would be great.
Yes. And I think the 243 funding is a really big one. And I know we've talked a lot about this, where it's one of these things where there's sort of this, okay, we'll go forth and do this thing. And folks are maybe wanting better supports in sort of achieving some of those goals and outcomes expected under 243 funding. So we really see ourselves as perhaps a natural complement to that. Could this be something that a career navigator becomes trained in to then be able to assign learning modules to the students? Exactly. That is our train the trainer model at work. I guess I almost call it Upwardly Global in a box. How do we just take all of the things we know are most effective for coaches and for job seekers or students and put them in your hands and train whoever on your team it would be most appropriate to train to use them with students, so that fewer folks are falling through the cracks of, okay, I've achieved this learning outcome and I want to get to that job over there, but how do I do it most effectively and most directly?
Do the trainings cost any money? Are there any fees associated with using your resources?
No, everything is free. We are a nonprofit. Private funding and philanthropic dollars allow us to really just focus on finding like-minded partners who we can be partnering with in these ecosystems and say, hey, let's collectively advance this work together. So at no time would anything ever cost money. It really is about how can we be advancing this work for everyone.
We hope you enjoyed this pre-recorded webinar. After you have passed the final test with a score of 80% or greater and have received your certificate of completion, please take a few moments to complete the course evaluation. Participant feedback helps Train PD at TCAL continue to provide high-quality professional development. To leave a course feedback, please go to the completed portion of your transcript. To do this, hover over the My Learning tab and select View Your Transcript. Click on the drop-down arrow next to the word Active and select Completed. Then, click Evaluate in the drop-down menu next to the course you just completed. Please note that your feedback is greatly appreciated.